Zach.
Yep.
Zach, come.
All right, I shouldn't need the mic, but thank you all for letting me come to your church and talk to you. I am Zach McLain. I'm running for Sheridan County Sheriff. Running specifically, I want to emphasize that I'm running to be the people's sheriff. I have been in public service for 21 years. I started when I was 14 years old, and I took an oath at a very young age. Our cadet advisor really believed in our Constitution. He served in multiple branches of the military, and so he taught us the Constitution in the fire cadet program. And I take that Constitution very seriously, my oath very seriously to the Constitution as a solemn promise to the citizens, to protect the citizens' God-given rights. But I had one hand on the Holy Bible when I gave that oath. And that to me means a lot because I am a Christian myself. And even when the public isn't looking, my integrity is still judged by God. So I know at the end of times, I'm going to be judged by my oath to the Constitution. And that's why I take it so seriously. There's some things I want to change in Sheridan County specifically. I do feel like our rights were violated in the last couple of years during the pandemic, and we really need to get back to the roots of what the sheriff's position is. And I feel like for decades it's been watered down. With my long line family history in law enforcement, I know what the sheriff's job is, and it's first and foremost, he's elected by the people to serve the people, and he's the liaison between the people and the law. He's supposed to be directly serving the people, and we need to get back to the roots of that. His primary job is to uphold our constitutional rights. After all, that is the only reason that there was a formed government, is to protect our rights, and the people should be directly in charge. I think that the sheriff he's really our last line of defense against tyranny, and we need somebody that is young, fit, able, and absolutely willing to make a stand when there needs to be a stand. I know personally, I don't vote for people to just float through in the good times. I'm voting for people that I think are able to actually make the stand and fight for us in the hard times. And I feel like silence is an action, and that's kind of what we dealt with in the last couple of years. And I'm not a silent person. I was raised to make a stand for what is right and to have pride, and I will make that stand if we ever get to that situation. I think that the last couple of years was a trial run, and we're going to be tested by fire again. And I absolutely think we need somebody strong enough to stand up, no matter who they have to stand up to. And we don't, even though the governor says that we need to shut things down, the sheriff has ultimate authority to say, not in my county. And I feel like personally, that's what I would have done, is said, not in our county. We can't take away people's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We have the freedom of enterprise. I can't go into a business and say I'm going to yank your business license because you're open during a mandate that is not a law. So that's one of the big things I want to change. The other thing that I want to change is our deputy reserve program. They call it a reserve program here, but it's not a true reserve program. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the deputy reserve program, but it's truly meant to be for the public to get extra training, and they can volunteer their time with the sheriff's office. And they don't have to go through a full academy. It's kind of like an EMT program, if you're familiar with that, where you go through a certain amount of training, then you'll get certified just like a cop to use a firearm, a taser, your pepper spray. I went through some of that training in South Dakota, and I was a deputy reserve for Custer, and I got hired with Sheridan when I was most of the way through that training. But it's really important to the community. It saves on tax dollars, for one, because you have it's a volunteer thing. They have to get so many hours every month, and that's an extra officer. He can assist all the other officers, so it's free for that. You look at Wild Rodeo, we have to bring in officers from all over the state because we don't have enough. Reserves are great for that. Specifically, with all the things going on in our world right now, I think that we'd have a lot of people that want to be a reserve, and the first class that I would put on, I would make it available for emergency responders and teachers or school employees anyways, because I do think that it's important. We have teachers that are willing to carry it in our community. We have teachers that have pursued training to be able to carry, and that was turned down to them. And I think that we can better protect our children by having a proactive deputy reserve program so that we can get teachers the training, and really the community the training, but especially the teachers right now. And then they can be a sworn deputy reserve officer to where they can legally carry in a school then. So I think we need a program that. And I think we need programs for mental health and for children that commit crimes. When children commit crimes, they're kind of just thrown back. And a lot of these kids just need to know a purpose in life. And I want to develop some sort of program. There's a lot of places around our nation that have great programs, and they have a re-entry rate of like 5% is all of these kids that commit crime. They go through this program, and only 5% of them ever end up coming back. So it's a lot of goals to go through, and I plan to be sheriff for a really long time. I will be a much different sheriff than Sheridan has seen in decades. I absolutely believe in being involved in the public. That's really the only way that you can do the job effective. You need to know what your citizens want, what their needs are, and there needs to be meetings a lot so that you can stay on top of all those things. I plan to every month have coffee with every single different town in Sheridan County so that I can know the needs of everybody and do my best to serve those needs. It is to serve and protect, and to me, serving is serving the people and their needs and protecting their rights. That's what serve and protect means. So if you guys have any questions.
Well, first of all, after hearing you, I wonder if you have any specific training that you would, you said that you would have for those with disabilities or with
With like mental health. I would definitely reach out for the mental health side of things. I have received some training in it, but I by no means have a psychology degree or anything. But I think for the public service workers themselves and everybody in the community, mental health is a big deal, especially through COVID. They shut our churches down. You can't shut off that for people. A lot of church for most people, I feel like, is really their mental health. It is for me. I know it is for a lot of other people. In my own church, we've had a few people that have committed suicide, and I do think it's directly related to the churches being shut down. That was their only release in life, and it's tragic. And first off, churches should never be shut down. That whole shutdown was absolutely unconstitutional, and that's where the silence was in action. And by doing nothing, you're doing something, and we need somebody that'll stand up and be the voice of the community and say, not in our county.
And do you know, how do you stand out above the other three? Do you know, what do you think you offer, or how do you stand out from the others?
I would say that I stand out from the others in the fact that anybody that knows me knows that I do make a solid stand. I'm not afraid, I'm not intimidated, and I think that's the biggest part of the job. I know the Constitution. I went through the biblical citizenship class. I went through the constitutional alive class. I will require that for my deputies because there's the new Second Amendment statute states in there that they have to knowingly violate their Constitution or violate their oath. Well, knowingly should go without saying. If you take that oath, you should know the Constitution. There's no excuses. So they will have to go through the Constitutional Alive program. I think it's a great program, and it really teaches people the roots of the Constitution. And I felt like I knew the Constitution before, but that was, next level. Obviously, you guys know that, but I think that it's very important that all officers go through that because first and foremost, you are there to protect the constitutional rights. I think another way that I stand out from my opponents is I do believe that. I absolutely believe that it is the sheriff's job to know the Constitution, and it is the sheriff's job to hold every law against the Constitution because you swear that oath to enforce the laws in a constitutional manner. If you don't know the Constitution, you're just upholding laws, and any law can be perverted to be unconstitutional.
So what are you going to do when they come for our guns?
If I have to deputize every patriotic citizen in my county, I will do it, and we'll line the borders. They're not coming after our guns. The only reason, I believe anyways, the only reason why we have any of our other rights is because we have the right to bear arms. Our government, as much as Biden says, oh, well, you can't fight the F-15s and everything else, he's scared of us. Our government better be scared of us because we are in charge of our government. They are not, we don't elect kings. We are not a democracy, which a lot of people say, oh, they're ruining our democracy. We're not a democracy. It's to the republic for which it stands. We are a republic. We, the people, rule. And we have the right to overturn the government.
So even when Pelosi and all her bullies bring it all through and they say we're coming, then you're gonna make Sheridan County, this little oasis, you'll make us a sanctuary,
Absolutely.
just like for,
Yep. I stand by my word. If I have to deputize everybody, I will, because then they'll be violating way worse. They're not just coming after people, they're coming after law officers. And we will line our borders and we won't let them in, and we'll have deputies that are willing to do that.
okay, thank you.
You mentioned a history of family law enforcement.
Yes, so my dad was actually a park ranger for Mount Rushmore, and he was chief of police in Hill City. My grandpa was the first town marshal of Hysham, Montana. I have an uncle that worked as a jail deputy and a probation officer. Pretty much most of my family on my dad's side, all the way back, have been involved in the law somehow, some way, investigators and such.
And your history? Personal?
My personal history with law, in 2007, I received some deputy reserve training in Custer, South Dakota. Then I was offered the job at Sheridan Fire Rescue, so I came to Sheridan Fire Rescue. I've always been interested in law, and mostly because of my family history, and I have done ride-alongs throughout my career. My career is mostly in fire, in emergency services and rescue. I'm still part of a rescue team out of Casper, 2 rescue teams actually, and the sheriff is in charge of all rescues in this county, so I think that's a huge benefit. I'm very knowledgeable in rescues. I've been a lead rescuer. I've been in leadership positions throughout my career. Actually, when I was even a fire cadet, I got nominated to be the fire cadet chief at 15 years old, and I was the cadet chief from 15 to 18, so I helped run the program. And then I ended up testing, being engineer on the fire department, and then I was captain on the fire department in Casper, or in Mills, Wyoming. And so I was in charge of a lot of people. I've been a squad boss when I worked for Forest Service. I have been in charge of incidents with multiple jurisdictions coming in, so you have to keep track of who they are, what city they're from, how many people are there, what side of the fire they're fighting, bigger incidents. And so I have been in charge of a lot of people. I do have a good track record of being a good leader. I talked to most of the guys that I was in charge of and asked them if they had any input. I am running for sheriff, and if they had any input, and all of them said that they'd absolutely work for me again, and I think that's very important. I really try to have a good brotherhood wherever I work, and I strive to be the best of the best. I do not settle for status quo on anything. I want Sheridan County Sheriff's Department to be the best and shine nationally, not just locally. We need to be the best. I will always strive to be the best of every team. Surely there's gotta be more questions.
There is. Go get going.
Yeah.
You spoke at one point at one of the school board meetings, I believe.
Yes.
Can you tell a little bit about that and what you hoped to accomplish by being there?
Mostly, I was bullied by teachers when I was younger, and I feel like with this mask thing, it was a way for teachers to bully the kids as well, and it brings on bullying. Anybody that's been a teenager that had to deal with acne, that's a big deal, especially as a teenage girl. Girls are more into looks than guys, and those masks cause acne. I don't care what anybody says. It's unhealthy to begin with, in my opinion, but it causes way more hardship for these kids, causes communication issues. A lot of these kids, I mentor kids with my outdoor show. I own Shadow M Outdoors, and I've had kids come up to me in tears because they can't stand to look in the mirror because of what these masks do to their face. That is an awful thing for people that are already less fortunate, that already get teased or bullied, and then they have to deal with that on top of it. So I did speak at the school board meeting because I will stand up for the children of our community always. I have always done it since I was younger. I've always been taught to stand up for those less fortunate than me, and I will stand up for the kids. And I told the school board that they need to stop being bullies, because I will stand up to them if I have to, because somebody has to. And then on top of that, the fact that they're escorting parents out of school board meetings for exercising their First Amendment rights is total crap. They can't do that. It is our First Amendment rights. That's another place the sheriff should have made a stand. He had a huge opportunity to make a stand and prove himself to this community, and he failed to do it. You can't let our rights get stomped on. That is your primary job as sheriff.
So then that's the same, like, for the mask mandates, you wouldn't have made us all have to wear our little pieces of things that didn't work anyway.
Exactly.
I mean, if you wanna
It-
wear it, wear it.
So this question got brought up on one of my opponent's pages, and they're like, well, you have to understand that, you know, the sheriff's office hands were tied by the governor because the governor put it on. You know what? There's a lot of sheriffs around our nation that did make a stand against their governors. As a sheriff, I'm not elected or appointed by the governor. I'm elected by my people. So what my people want in my community and what's the safest for them, that's what I stand for. And I can tell you the majority of the people didn't like it, and I would have made the stand. It's unconstitutional, and it wasn't a law, it's a mandate. The sheriff should have stood up, I would have stood up and said, not in my county, it won't be enforced. Go about your business, you have the freedom of enterprise, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I know if you shut down my business, it's taking away my life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You can't do that. That's our framework of our Constitution. You take the frame away, the Constitution fails. We have to get people that'll stand up across the board, not just sheriff. I just feel like sheriff is the most important. That's why I am standing up and I'm running for office. I was taught in my life to not just complain. If I have a solution, to stand up and take it on, and that's what I'm doing.
So tell me, okay, so we have this school board meeting where the parents were exited from. I'm not sure that the sheriff was even present or anything. So what does that actually look like for you as a sheriff to step in? You know, obviously it'd be after the fact, because if you're
Yes.
not attending these.
Yep.
So what does that look like? How do you enforce that?
Well, for sure, there should have been a meeting, and from just a little bit of investigation I've done myself, I feel like there was false information to law enforcement officers. The problem with that whole situation, which, I mean, you can't really blame the police on scene because they have to go off of what they're told. And so they did what they felt they had to do from what they were told. But then it was just kind of dropped. Nothing ever happened about it. It should have been investigated. It was on video. Like, how much easier can it get for an investigation? You were told one thing, this is the video, compare the two. If somebody lied, it's illegal to lie to a law enforcement officer. And they should have been held accountable for that, whoever it was.
So who has jurisdiction there? If you're in
Overall-
if you're in the city of Sheridan, is it Sheridan? The
So
city?
Sheridan usually takes on most of the calls within, actually they take on all the calls within the city limits, but the sheriff's office has jurisdiction over its entire county and every city within it. So they do have jurisdiction in city limits, and that's another problem. There needs to be a bridge mended between the city and the SO, because right now there's not a really good working relationship from what I've been told by multiple people, and we can't have that boundary. I think that, you know, some of the police officers, or all of them, need to be deputized, so if they are in a pursuit, they can go in the county, and the deputies already have jurisdiction in the city limits, and it shouldn't stop when they hit city limits. They need to keep pursuing it, and if you catch them, you clean them.
How, with that conflict between the two organizations, what would you do to breach that?
You know, I do know Travis Koltiska pretty well, and I don't think that it'll be very hard to mend that bridge. I don't know exactly where it's at, but it seems like it's in the overhead somewhere, because most of the line guys, boots on the ground, they get along pretty well, and I do think that we have really good officers. But you know, you look at any job and you want to do better in your job, but you have a boss that isn't going to have your back, it's pretty hard to do better at your job. So I think that's one of the biggest importance of having a good sheriff that will stand behind their guys that are constitutional, and have a sheriff that is constitutional will make a stand, because that goes across our county, every city within it. So the bridges need to be mended, and there needs to be a common agreement on how this county is going to run and work together, train together.
Hey, Zach,
Go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, what is your response to people who might question, your age or experience or lack of experience, or not having ever held an elected position, or what would be your response to those questions?
So I think that it's actually very much in my favor that I have never held an elected position because I am no politician. I don't plan to be a politician. This is as political as my life is getting because to me, I'm not in politics. To me, I am in a prolonged job interview with all the citizens of my county to be their sheriff and to get their trust to be their sheriff, to make a stand as a sheriff. And a lot of people say, oh, you're so young, which I'm 36 years old, so if anybody's questioning that, I'm told I look a little younger than that, but that's my legitimate age. But I think, what's that?
You're old enough to be president.
That's right, that's what I say too, yep. And I think that it's a good thing that I'm young, I'm fit, and I'm able. I don't believe in just being in that job to be an administrator. I will go to police academy, I will get certified because I have never, in any leadership position I've been in, I've never believed in giving somebody an order that I couldn't or wouldn't do myself. I am perfectly able, I'm fit, I can probably beat most people in the physical tests, and I am a very fast learner. I do have a lot of knowledge on how to be a law enforcement officer by ride-alongs, hearing family stories. I have a long line of law in my family, which a lot of people are like, well, it's your family, but I also am a dog breeder and trainer, and you breed dogs that are, their parents were good hunters, and their parents were good hunters, and their parents were good hunters, and I'm a firm believer that you get those same qualities in humans as well. We do carry some of that on. I feel like I was born a leader. I don't feel like people can just be trained to be a good leader. You can maybe train somebody to be an okay leader, but to me, you're either born a leader or you're not born a leader.
The Wyoming Constitution, how familiar are you with it?
I have read through it a couple times. I might not be able to tell you the specific section, but I can tell you one thing that I think is very important in the Wyoming Constitution. Well, there's a lot of important things, but one of them that stood out to me is it is in, I think it's 20, section 7, I believe is what it is. But anyways, it says in there that if you violate your oath, you are to be held on counts of perjury, and you're never allowed to hold a position of profit or honor in our state for the rest of your life. I think that there's a lot of things in our Wyoming Constitution that are not upheld. So really, I have it right here. What does it really mean if nobody is held accountable? We need to start holding people accountable. The oath is extremely important. We have multiple elected officials, especially in our own county, that are in violation of this very document. They need to be held accountable.
So it sounds like you have some experience that plays into this kind of indirectly, but as far as direct experience in law enforcement, as sheriff, are you willing and able to be boots on the ground and get that experience?
Absolutely, yep. And I've actually talked to, when I've been going door to door, I have talked to a couple deputies. One of them was newer, so I hadn't met him before. And I assured them that I am not one that goes in there thinking that I'm this macho guy and I'm gonna start barking orders at everybody. I do know that I have a lot to learn from all those guys. And I do know a lot of people in law that I really respect, and I think they're absolutely amazing officers. Those are the guys I'm gonna choose to learn by. But I'm not just gonna go in there and be this high and mighty guy and think that I'm entitled to everything that they're entitled to. I wanna go through the training. I will go through the same training process that they did. I mean, I'll be in a different kind of role of it because I have a lot of administration stuff I'll have to do as well, but I will go through the training. I won't make it to where anybody can say, oh, he just kind of floated through it. Not gonna happen. I will go through the exact training they had to go through, and I'll want my deputies to tell me whether they think I'm ready or not, because I think that's a huge respect thing to them as well. I don't ever want somebody to feel like I floated through anything. I've worked very hard for everything I've ever got in my life, and I'm willing to work hard for this, and I do believe that I will be the best bang for the buck for the taxpayers, because it is a high-paid job. I got asked that question as well, and I am an extremely hard worker, and I really feel like I could work circles around anybody, and I plan to do that as sheriff. It's gonna take a lot of work. I have a lot of goals. I wanna be the best sheriff this county has ever seen, and have the people really bring back that respect to the law enforcement, and that's earned. It's not just given. And I plan to earn that back.
So you're saying that there is some people that are not following the Constitution. So if you become sheriff, will you be proactive on that matter?
Absolutely. I think we need somebody to be the community's voice. And you know, we don't have a news source in Sheridan, which makes it difficult to know much about our county, really. And our sheriff should be that news source for the people when we don't have one, and he should be the voice of the people. When people have issues, the sheriff should know and be going to meetings like this often with the people, not just going to the county commissioner meetings and the city council meetings or whatever the other meetings are. The real meetings are with his people, because that's who elects him, and that is who he's supposed to be the voice for, is his community. And I will be proactive on it, and I do think those people need called out, especially the school board. They violated their oath,
Yes.
and they should have been called out for it. And yeah, the press probably won't like me for it, because the press is the press, but that's all right. I will be serving the community of Sheridan and the people within it.
Well, you can come to Manchester 8 o'clock in the morning, Buckhorn, and we'll fill you in on all the gossip.
Perfect.
So during our class, I don't know in my lifetime if I've ever actually read our Wyoming Constitution, and my world was a little rocked to find out our coroner, that I have never cared who ever got in that position ever, can go ahead and say, you know what, Zach, really don't like you today, let's go ahead and have you arrested.
Yep.
So in that vein, and my eyes a little wider open,
Elect Dr. Bird.
thank you. Okay, that tells me you've already.
He's
heard about the
constitutional,
topic.
and I have mad respect for Bird already. Yep.
Okay.
I don't think you should just be waiting up there for people to raise their hands. So here are a couple questions.
Okay.
Why did you not choose to be a deputy first? And two, do you have a family?
I do not have a family currently, but I actually did test for Sheridan Police Department, and I have tested for Sheridan Sheriff's Office. I've got offered both those positions in my past, and to me, looking back now, I mean, it was life events why I chose not to at the time. You know, I was weighing out my retirement with fire and such, and it just something didn't feel right, so I didn't do it. But I was on the podcast with the Ramble Room, and I mentioned that on the Ramble Room too, and really looking at it now, I am very glad that I didn't, and I do think that it was a godsend, because I think that there's a high likelihood that I would be fired right now had I been a deputy or a police officer, because I absolutely refused to uphold an unconstitutional order, and we would have butted heads, and I could have been fired for it, because I do take my constitutional oath extremely seriously. And it's not an oath to my boss, it's not just an oath to my community, it's an oath to God, and he holds me accountable for that in the end. And I think it's actually good that I haven't been. And the other side of it, I get asked that question, or I guess I shouldn't say I get asked a question. There's people on Facebook that like to bring up the fact, well, he's not even a law enforcement officer yet. It's important to remember that it is not a requirement for the sheriff to even be a sworn officer. And the importance of that is, if you only roll over law enforcement after law enforcement after law enforcement, and they get indoctrinated into a bad system or bad habits, how do you ever correct it? Because you're constantly bringing people up through that, and then you have bad habits growing, and you end up in a police state. We need to avoid that. Our rights have already been stomped on, and I truly believe that this is the time that we get fresh eyes on everything within, and somebody that is truly constitutional, that will make a stand for our freedoms and take the actions needed, stand up to who needs stood up to, and get rid of the corruption of that. We can't have more officers going up and playing this role. I know that our current sheriff has endorsed one of the candidates, and I don't know exactly where he stands, but I'm not impressed with the way things were handled the last 2 years. We need a change.
This is a great segue. What is, when you're elected sheriff, what's your first 100 days look like?
My first 100 days will be getting to know, I mean, I know most of the deputies, but I need to really get to know my deputies and get to know their abilities and truly get to know where they stand, because we are going to be a constitutional county when I get elected sheriff. It's no question, we will be. And I will make that known. You take an oath to the Constitution. If you don't believe in upholding that oath above all else, then you need to find a new place to work, because we have to uphold our oath to the Constitution. Now, I do believe most deputies feel that way. I think that we have some faulty leadership that prevent that, but we have to uphold the oath to the Constitution, and they need to know where I stand, and I need to know their abilities, and I do think the first 100 days is gonna be a learning curve for everybody involved. I have a lot to learn, they have a lot to learn about me, and really we need to develop a brotherhood with each other, because we have to work as a team. I'm not one that's gonna go in and be a dictator, but the only thing that I will say is we will be constitutional, and the rest of it, we need to work together and figure out where everybody stands and learn everybody's abilities and what kind of shifts they like. I wanna listen to everybody and talk to them one-on-one right from the get-go and see what they feel like the bad things are and what they feel like the good things are. I think that it's actually a great opportunity for all the employees of the sheriff's office to be able to truly voice all their issues they have, what they would like to see changed, because I'm fresh, I'm looking at everything, I wanna know the faults, I wanna know the goods. And I think it'll be a huge opportunity for them to get the changes that they might want.
So that's in-house. And I know you've been boots on the ground and you've pounded the pavement already, banging on a lot of doors. What is it that the community is asking of you within the first 100 days, let's say? Programs or what have you?
The community, from what I've seen so far, they want more of a proactive approach with law enforcement, which does gain the community's respect. And it really helps the officers not become jaded. I've talked to a lot of ex-law enforcement officers and current law enforcement officers, and the jadedness gets brought up quite often, because I don't ever want my officers to get jaded, and really the way to prevent that is they need to talk to good people 70% of the time, so that that little 30% of the time that they're dealing with criminals doesn't seem like such a weight on their shoulders. A lot of what you hear is, well, they deal with bad people all the time. Well, then they need to deal with good people more often. Don't just sit in your car, don't just drive around. You know, you see a rancher fixing his fence, go talk to him for a little bit. Talk to the business owners down Main Street or in these other towns. That's good people of the community. We need to talk more to the good people of the community, so you have faith that the majority of the people are good. And I will tell people, we have amazing people in Sheridan County. I've knocked on a lot of doors so far, and even the people that might not vote for me, we have great conversations. We have really good people in our county, and people that think alike. The media tries to say that, you know, oh, we're the minority. We're not the minority. I do believe most people feel like we do, and our Constitution needs stood up for, and we need somebody that'll make a hard stand, and I believe I'm it.
Because of the school district and the issues there, I personally think part of the problem was the physician in charge of mandating. So how would you deal, you know, it's like everybody's going to the school board. Well, the driving force then was this physician in town that said, oh, we gotta do this.
He got put above the sheriff, and he is not above the sheriff, and that should have been known from the get-go. But it takes a sheriff that'll make a stand to say, nope, this is not going on. Now, to get a doctor's advice is one thing, but to have him control the entire program is not okay. And there's a lot more rights that were violated behind the scenes, such as being tracked by cell phones, a hotline put in place to report businesses that are open that weren't supposed to be open with the mandates, hotlines that if you tested positive for COVID, then you could call in your neighbor for going outside to get a breath of fresh air, which is the healthiest thing for them to do. That is a violation of search and seizure, in my opinion. You can't just go through and track us on our cell phones. I'm sorry, not okay. We're not felons. And to quarantine the healthy, I think, is stupid in the first place.
So was the sheriff lax then in allowing this to
Yes.
happen?
And he was part of the program
Part of the
from what I have been told by multiple sources anyways, that he helped develop the program for this hotline, the secret hotline to call in. It's a violation of our rights. I know probably none of you like to be tracked by your cell phone, or you'll be under arrest if you are, I don't care if people test positive, whatever the situation is. That's getting right to the roots in Nazi Germany, tracking people, and yeah, it's, the whole situation really upset me, which is why I'm running, because our rights have been violated in Sheridan County, which honestly, when I first saw it, was the toilet paper. When I saw that on the news, I was like, oh, come on. I was like, at least this will never happen here. Well, guess what? It wasn't very long, and I'm like, I can't buy toilet paper. What is going on? And then it just trickled down. I think we've seen a smaller portion of it, but our rights were still violated, and we have to prevent that from ever happening again. A lot of these businesses will never recover from being shut down. Why does Walmart get to stay open, but you shut down our churches? You shut down all these mom and pop businesses, but yet, if you want to keep your alcoholic problem going, we'll deliver to your house so these kids will get abused and domestic violence rates goes up. I've seen child abuse, I've seen domestic violence, and locking those kids at home and still supplying the addiction is not a good idea.
So during, you mentioned, attending one of this, or speaking at the school board meeting. What other examples do you have in either your personal or professional life during this COVID thing in the last 2 years where you have kind of made a stand?
The one stand I have made is the multiple dates of being threatened to be fired from my job for not getting the vaccine. I've been ridiculed by many of the people that I work for not just giving in, like, oh my gosh, you're gonna let your job go over this. Absolutely. And I didn't fill out a religious exemption form because it's none of their business. And it says right in this book right here, they're not to decide what my religious stance is. It's against my religion, plain and simple. It's not for my HR to judge. It's not for my leaders to judge. It's how I stand, and it is my right. It's not for them to question. And then I also got told, well, it's a temporary mandate. Okay, well, when the temporariness is over, come figure out how to suck it out of my body. You tell me how that works, and then maybe we'll have a plan, but it's impossible. On top of it, working the job I work, I have seen the bad side effects of it throughout this whole pandemic, and I'm a lot more solid on my beliefs of not getting it now. And you won't force it in my body. I was looking for a job when I found that one. I am a man of many skills. I'll find a job if I have to. And I'll probably make more money at it anyway, so I won't be hurting too bad.
So I would ask the question, then personally, you're willing to sacrifice financially by what you just said?
I am.
You will stand?
I will be sacrificing financially to get elected sheriff. My retirement will take a humongous hit.
Okay, and that leads to my question then, because with shekels come shackles. So we take money from the federal government, from outside entities, and we build these systems to track phone calls, to track people, to hire more people, to do more things that are part of the system of oversight. You will personally stand for it as a sheriff. How would you stand to say no to the money? Even if it makes a lot of people dislike you, saying you're giving away money.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a huge component in most of our government, our local government especially our school boards. We've all seen it. I guess I don't know how much research you guys have done, but in order to get this millions of dollars, looks great. I would love $1 million too, but you have to do this to get this. How much is it worth? I am very well trained in risk first benefit. That is the first thing you learn in any kind of first response is the risk worth the reward. And I've been 21 years now of dealing with that. And that's another point of we need to get a proactive deputy reserve program right now, because I do believe that there's money getting received that is putting tourniquets on parts of this funding, and we don't have to have that funding. Wyoming makes a lot of money in general, and we need to budget correctly so that we don't have to rely on this federal money that has all these strings attached. We have to get rid of that. As an entire state, we have to get rid of that. Because, I mean, there's even at one of the city council meetings that I was at, when they were talking about the vaccine, and they're like, well, you know, we dealt with this with the alcohol and everything else, and you know, if you want the money, then you have to do it. Well, then don't want the money. Budget correctly. It's plain and simple. Yeah, there's a lot of programs we can have by getting the money, but is it really worth it? Is that what the community wants? That's where the sheriff needs to be talking to the people way more often. Is this what you guys want? It's against our constitutional rights to force an injection into you. All these little steps are right back to Nazi Germany. We're headed there. We have to get the right people elected across the board.
So when you're running for governor, we need someone.
You need to elect Brent Bien.
Yes. Yes.
Make my first 4 years really easy and elect him.
Yeah, he's a very good man.
Yep. We have to get people that'll stand up, though. We know Gordon won't.
No, well, he's taking the transgender buyout.
Mm-hmm.
He's taking those things.
Yep.
So the city's budget is, well, proposed budget currently for 2022-2023 is just over $90 million. The county's budget is, I just have it here, 117 million, something along those lines. Where are you as sheriff gonna get funds if you're not gonna be getting federal funds for the programs like the reserve program, like teachers program to protect our kids in schools, et cetera?
I will apply for as many grants as I can as well. Grants don't have all those strings attached to them. There's multiple grants available. It is a lot of work. I filled out grants for the fire department. We had all expired rescue equipment when I came back from Mills, and I got a grant because we just couldn't come up with the money, so I got a $10,000 grant to supply that. I think we can get the same grant for the sheriff's office as well. They're eligible for it as well, so I'll apply for that same grant, and I'll look for other grants available. And it really doesn't cost much more than getting the books and stuff for training. You have to buy your own gun, you have to buy your own belt, all that stuff. We provide them with the uniform clothing, but that's about it. So it's really the award for that is way worth the money spent. And if I can afford it personally, I would even be willing to take it out of my personal account, because I do believe that it's that important for our community. It's literally free labor. These people volunteer, and there's actually grants available for that too, on certain criminal aspects of you need people for different types of things. Then you can actually pay those reserves and say, hey, we have grant money available, so you can come in and actually get money for, volunteering your time. You're getting paid for it at that point. But I think it's very important, and it provides safety for everybody. I think the reserve officers need to be strategically picked from Story and Arvada and Claremont and Ranchester and Dayton, to where when you do have that high risk call and you only have a couple deputies on duty, say it's a domestic call and you have another officer on a rollover across our county, they're 90 miles apart, he can say, hey dispatch, I want you to page all of these reserve deputies on my way, and if somebody's available, tell them I'll pick them up on my way. It's a high risk call. Why would you not want backup? It's available then for free.
When you did the Constitutional Life class, what was 1 to 3 things, and I give you that because it's hard to say one, that you thought you knew that you might have had wrong before? Can you remember anything?
I guess I wouldn't say that I thought I knew, but the Benjamin Rush and his Foundation of Public Schools, that is absolutely not taught anymore, is to love and serve your God, love and serve your country, then love and serve your family. I mean, I feel like I've lived it. That's what I've been taught in life in general, but I never knew that that was supposed to be the foundations of our public school, which is very disappointing that that isn't taught anymore. And I think it's very important. I would hope we can bring it back sooner than later, but their whole perversion of the separation of church and state is gonna be hard to fight to prevent that, because they have warped that to mean so many different things that is not what it means. But we gotta get God back in our schools. I think having Brent be in as a governor would be a great start. But we have to do it. I'm a firm believer that the reason why all these problems are happening in our world is because people are indoctrinated from a very young age to turn their back on God. They don't have to stand up to our flag. They don't have to say they're removing God from the Pledge of Allegiance. Like, they're removing God at every ounce and effort they can possibly do, and we have to get that to stop. Whether you believe or you don't believe, that's the foundation of our nation. Our Constitution was founded on biblical Christianity beliefs. And whether you want to believe it or not, that's what our country's founded on.
What weaknesses do you have that you're seeking to overcome?
Probably just the knowledge side of things in the law, which I would go through the police academy to learn the things that I don't currently know, and seek that knowledge. I'm not an unintelligent person. I learn very fast, and I'm really capable. I think that's the other thing that my age will play a huge advantage in, is I am young and I learn easy. I already have a ton of skills in life, and I've always strived to learn more. If I don't know how to do something, I will figure it out, because I don't like to have anything that I don't know how to do. It's just, that's how I'm wired.
So let's say, you don't get elected this go around. Is going to the academy and gaining that knowledge something that you would be trying to achieve, so that the next go around, when you do this again?
It would probably depend on a lot of things in life, being the academy isn't something you can just do on the side. I would have to give up my career and go to academy, which might be in my future, I don't know. Depends on if this vaccine thing pops up again, because I'm not getting it. I'll go to war before that happens.
At the moment, do the deputies have to be vaccinated?
Not to my knowledge. I do know there were some comments that I overheard of, if they want a paycheck, then they might have to get it, but to my knowledge, they didn't have to yet.
So, you touched on some of your skills, 21 years in community service, leadership roles, incident command structure, knowing the fire department like I do, you guys train. And that's
Yep.
something that law enforcement doesn't do as much of or as well.
Yep.
How do you see your role as sheriff with your background from the fire service?
We will have to train more, and with multiple agencies. I'm not just talking the Sheridan PD. I'm talking, we need to communicate with Johnson County, we need to communicate over the mountain, we need to communicate with the BIA, and we need to train together, because if a big incident happens in our county, we need all of them. We don't have enough to control a huge incident in our county. Same with the fire department. And if you want to be the best at something, the only way you get there is by training and preparation, and we can't get complacent of, it won't happen in Sheridan. We've dealt with that the last 2 years. It happened here, and anything can happen here. I think we need to be more proactive on the school shooting program. We need to be training with both Sheridan PD and SO. We need to come together, have a strategic plan on exactly how this is gonna happen. how we're gonna respond to it, who we're gonna contact, what the fire department's gonna do. I know in the last 5 years anyway, we've never trained on, okay, if a cop goes into the school building and he gets shot, who's the tactical medic? That's a very important side of things too. We need to protect our officers. So who's gonna go in? These trainings have to happen. We can't be complacent. And I think it's a huge thing to make good relationships with neighboring agencies as well, because if you have a big case that crosses the border, we need to pursue it right away. And the only way you're gonna do that is if you have a good working relationship with them. And those counties should do the same thing, to where then if it goes to the next county, we gotta be able, that's the only way you crack down on these bigger cases. And it boils down to training and playing out all of the what ifs. We do that in the fire world. It's like, okay, what if this went well, but what if that happened? When we do our after action reviews, it's the same thing. Okay, this worked great, but what if this little thing changed? Then what would have we done? And we train on it. And I think that's very important, and we need to be way more proactive about it.
So the school shooting in Texas, it's sad that it occurred. It's happening more often than it needs to. What is your stance on, I guess parents showed up.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of parents showed up that were armed. A lot of parents showed up that wanted to get into the school, and the police were holding them back.
The police should have been in there.
I'm not gonna disagree with you, especially after just going through, some courses.
Yep.
And they just had all kinds of training just recently, prior to the event.
Furthermore, my top priority is getting the reserve program off the ground. I've already talked to other sheriff's offices around our state, because I was told by somebody within that the reason they don't have it is because per state statute they can't. That's false. I've called multiple sheriff's offices around the county. Gillette, really close to us, they actually have a very proactive reserve program, and I fully plan on getting their program, figuring out how it'll fit Sheridan, how to get people through that the quickest. If they had that program in Uvalde, Texas, and you had teachers armed, it would have been a much different situation. And I'm not saying that I'm gonna go tell every teacher they should carry a gun by any means. I don't think that's good at all, but there are teachers that are willing, and the ones that are willing to go through the proper training, to be able to carry, to know that they will actually do what they need to do if that situation happens, they should carry. And they need to be able to get that training that needs to be available to them. It protects our students. Furthermore, on these football games and basketball games and choir concerts, sports are huge in Sheridan. There's something going on almost every night. And if you had a proactive reserve program, you could have a reserve officer at every one of these events. You have somebody in uniform with a gun standing at the entryway, it deters 99% of criminals. I know if I was a criminal and I'm like, oh, there's an officer right there, I'm probably not gonna try to walk past him with a gun.
And Zach, if I understood that program and what your goal is to have happen, is that if I, as Austin's mother, want to go through that,
Yes,
I can do that, and
Yep.
I can go to his private school and protect him.
absolutely.
And those parents, if they had been through that in Texas,
Yep.
they wouldn't have had to wait for law enforcement to
Yep.
give them the go-ahead. They
Mhm.
could have just gone and done what they needed to do.
Yep.
Since law enforcement there decided that they couldn't do their job.
I'm a little more conspiracy theorist on that whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big red flag.
I like that a lot.
So, you've spoken about training, and, I think that that's great. One of the other things that I think is really important is for none of us to feel like we are an island. I do feel like part of the agenda against, our freedoms is to make us feel isolated. And in that regard, what measures would you take to reach beyond the border of Sheridan County to establish communication and relationships with other counties and other agencies?
I want to travel to. I believe in face-to-face. I'm a huge component of that. I've learned that even through going door-to-door campaigning. I think people really respect the face-to-face thing. It's not over the phone. Anybody can say anything over the phone. Anybody can type something on a computer. That's where our social media thing has gone so whack too, because nobody actually has to stand up. And I think that you can get much more accomplished getting these relationships built if you're actually shaking hands and you're face to face, and you can actually read the emotions off of people to know what's important to each person. I think that's absolutely important. Yeah, those relationships have to be made. I don't know if that answers.
So, do you feel that active communication with other agencies could have played out differently, or caused things to play out differently in Sheridan? I know that there were counties across the mountain that did not comply with mandates to the same degree that we did, and that perhaps that could have strengthened.
Could have. You have the Sheriff's Association. Maybe they did have a meeting, I don't know, I'm not saying they didn't, but you get those sheriffs, even if the majority of the Sheriff's Association, maybe the majority of them didn't make that stand, but I mean, either way, I don't care if none of them did, I would have made the stand. But it does help you make a stand if you're like, okay, well, sheriff from this county, sheriff from this county, sheriff from this county, you can put your heads together, then you have a common knowledge of what's going on, you have a common stance, and then you can work together. Because it's much easier to get through it anyways if you're not all alone. And I would have reached out to those counties, and I mean, it would just help me keep my backbone, especially, and bounce ideas off of them. How are they doing? If you have that group to bounce those ideas off of, that you're in a common role, it's much easier.
Can you give more clarity to your statement of taking an oath to God and He is ultimately your judge or who holds you accountable for that? Who is God in your life?
God is my Lord and Savior. I have confessed my sins, and He's guiding me through my life. I actually just got baptized last Sunday. I think that there's a lot of things going on in my life that I think, I really need to hold true to my Christianity. I was saved when I was 6 years old, is when I said the sinner's prayer with my aunt, sitting in a bank parking lot in Hill City, South Dakota. I still remember it very clearly because I just had like heat rush over my body. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I believed in God long enough that since I was so young, I don't know how not to believe, which I think is really good. But it's harder for me to understand people that don't, so that's the bad side of it. But I've even been asked by people in the fire service, like, well, why do the firefighters need to say that? I mean, we don't carry a gun. And I was like, you are on calls where you have people's lives at your fingertips. You might be the only one there at the time. So who's holding you accountable? If you think the person's bad, do you just walk away? I mean, that's where I think, for me, having a relationship with God and swearing that oath on the Holy Bible, there is always somebody watching. That is why you swear that oath, because there's always somebody watching. And that's part of the integrity side of it. If you have integrity, you're doing the right thing when nobody's watching. But I can specifically remember a time that I literally saved a murderer's life. I knew that he just murdered. And it's like, you have to dig deep sometimes because you know such the awful things that they have done. But I swore that oath to the Constitution. I am a Christian man, and it isn't my job to make that judgment. I did what I'm capable to do, and I saved his life. And that's why all public service take that oath. That's why all elected officials take that oath, because I think much of our government, it might not be the situation of life and death, but it's the situation of stealing people's money. And you swear that oath to do the right thing always, because God is watching. And I think that's important that we elect Christians. And honestly, if all Christians would vote and vote off of their beliefs, we wouldn't have the issues we have. But we gotta get everybody out to vote. We have to get Christians out to vote. We can overtake our entire country and get it back on track if all Christians just went out and voted. I think it's very important. And I am strong in my faith. purpose of the Second Amendment is they didn't write it when they got back from hunting deer. I love Biden's quote of, well, are the deer wearing Kevlar vests? Nope, but the government is. So if I wanted to park an F-15 in my driveway, if I had the funding to do it, I should be able to do it. If I want a tank parked in my barn, I'm gonna park a tank in my barn, because the Second Amendment was written to overthrow a tyrannical government. It wasn't written just to protect our house. It wasn't written just to protect the public. It was written to protect ourselves from tyranny. That is why it was written. And we should have the abilities to overthrow our government always. They want to take it away because they want to do something that we would be taking up our guns against them. That's the only reason they're trying to take it away. And we don't need any more laws on it. I've been asked about the red flag laws. The red flag laws are just a way for them to slowly take away guns from everybody. We all have had a neighbor that didn't like us, or maybe we had a relationship where you broke up with them or whatever, and they really wanted to get you bad because you broke their heart or whatever. Well, that's an easy way to take their guns away. You can say, well, they said this, or he said that, or, what are they gonna believe? We already know right now that there's a lot of just one-sided stories being heard, and people are getting their rights stomped on because of it. Lack of investigation. Well, I could easily say, well, I don't like my neighbor, I don't think he should have a gun, so I'm gonna tell everybody that he's threatening to shoot up someplace. Oh, red flag law, you can't own guns. There's a lot of abuse that can happen in that system. I do believe that mentally unstable people probably shouldn't have guns, but their way of the red flag laws, that isn't what they're looking at. They're looking at slowly nitpicking all these people off so that eventually nobody has guns.
Yeah, they'll just be going door to door, anonymous called.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've already had our rights stomped on tracking us on cell phones or whatever else, and you're like, oh, I just saw a picture of him shooting an AR. Whoop, red flag law. Take that one away. We can't have any more gun laws, period. The only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. We need more people to actually carry, and then these criminals will be done away with.
Public hangings. I'm in favor of that.
I am too, honestly. You look at the crime rates, there was consequences. Everybody's seen it as a little kid. I mean, a lot of people are like, I can't believe they'd take their kids to see that. Well, you know what? If they don't want to hang, they won't commit that crime, right?
Well, you drive down the road for 36 years, you get 3 squares a day in education, so
Yeah.
that's the big.
And the best gym membership that you could ever have.
It's free.
Yeah. I heard that from my uncle all the time, which my uncle is stacked. He's a huge dude, but he's like, I'm not big compared to the criminals. That's all they do all day. I have to work. He's like, they work out, they pump iron all day long, and they're just monstrous people. He's like, then if they go against me, what am I supposed to do? It takes 10 of us to take them out. It's like, I honestly don't think that they should have a bunch of weights to get big and strong, because is that what you're offering all your jail deputies? Can they work out for 8 hours a day? Well, they should be able to if the criminals can, because that's who they have to fight in the end.
As I'm understanding it, we have just had some laws passed giving border control the right to now enter with no search warrant or anything like that. Are you aware of any of that?
I am not aware of that. I'll have to look into it.
What is and you may not know this fully yet, but how does that all play out? There are about 300 agencies too many in the federal system. So when something is done by them that directly affects us unconstitutionally, even if they have, most of them have the promulgating power to write those laws and enforce those laws, even if they're not constitutional.
That's where we need a better sheriff, because the sheriff can say, get out of my county.
Okay,
It's
that's my
happened in
question.
Bighorn County.
Yeah,
He told the BLM, not here, not today, and it was upheld. So we have to have sheriffs that'll make that stand. If it's unconstitutional, Sheriff is an important job, and I do think everybody should really look into every candidate, because it is the most important elected official that you can possibly vote for. It's close to home, and that is your direct protection. And I do think everybody needs to look into the candidates and see who they think can best protect them, because it's very important. That is why I'm running, because at this point, I only trust myself.
So if they come, any one of those agencies for any number of reasons, as,
They have to talk to me and tell me what they're doing, or they can't be here.
so if they just show up on our doorstep,
Call me.
okay, that's what I wanna know.
Yep,
So we should be able to call dispatch and say we want the sheriff.
absolutely. And you shouldn't be afraid to do so, and you should know what the sheriff stands for to know that's who to call. And that's the problem we have right now. Most people don't know where the sheriff stands, or they know where he doesn't stand, and that is important. It's also where the sheriff needs to be available to the public often. It is a huge job. And honestly, a lot of people say it pays a lot, but for the amount of hours that I plan to spend in it, it's not a lot of money. But I'm willing to do it, and that's why I'm making a stand, and I am gonna sacrifice some money. I work 56 hours a week at the fire department. I have a side business of doing tires and windshields mobily that is very successful, and I'm giving up both of those to become sheriff and have one wage. I'll be taking not only a pay cut, but I'm taking a retirement cut. But my whole thing is, if I have no freedoms when I retire, what is my retirement worth? And we all deserve that freedom. And I was raised to stand up. I may have not been in the military, but I've taken that oath and I've lived that oath. And I've been serving communities since I was 14 years old. I've known pretty much no different at this point. I've served the community, and I took that oath to serve the community to the best of my abilities. I didn't take that oath to just be a fireman or to just be a rescue leader. I took that oath to uphold the Constitution to my best of abilities. And at the fire department, I don't think that I can uphold the Constitution as well as if I were sheriff, because I can directly uphold that oath and protect everybody of this county and keep us free, or make us free at this point. I don't think that we're exactly free right now, and we need to get it back.
What do you say to people who are completely opposite, who are maybe thinking about voting for you, who aren't on the same page at all? Like, how would you convince them? Try to.
I'm not one to convince them. I stand where I stand, and I'm not gonna sway what my beliefs are to gain a vote. If I don't get elected because of it, then I guess I don't. But I stand strong where I stand, and I was raised to make a stand and to be truthful. That's the integrity in me. If people don't like what I have to say, then they don't need to like me. But I do believe that the majority of the people want their freedoms back, and they want their freedom stood up for, and that's why I'm making a stand. And I tell people exactly what I stand for. I have talked to people that are like, I don't think everybody should own guns. And I'm like, well, we disagree, sorry. I think everybody should, because if everybody was carrying guns, like the Wild West, the criminals go away after a while because they pull their gun in a bad situation and they don't survive it. They break into a house, that house has guns, and they die. Everybody should have a gun. And I think people should open carry more often, which, you don't see it often anymore. And I'm even one of them that you notice when somebody open carries, because you're like, oh wow, and then you start sizing them up like, oh, should they have a gun? I don't know. but honestly, I think if the majority of people were open carrying again, you just take from the criminal stance of it. Say this guy's following a lady through the supermarket and he's like waiting for his opportunity to jump her or whatever. And then all of a sudden, Andy walks by and he has a Glock strapped to his hip. That guy's just like us, and he's like, oh, maybe I won't do this today.
Or if she had it.
Yeah, exactly, same thing, yeah. They should have, yeah. Yeah, it is a deterrent. Yep, and people, they start walking a straighter line when they see people are armed around them. In fact, just this last year, because I think it is so important, every time I see somebody carrying open carry, I go up and I thank them. Because they are keeping our community safer, just for the fact that they have a gun strapped to their hip. And I think we all should do that more often so that it becomes more normal and they don't feel like, oh, should I open carry? I don't know. I mean, I deal with that sometimes. Like, I'll be on my way hunting and I have my Glock on me because I'm hunting, and then I'm walking in Walmart and I'm like, oh, should I offend anybody? Well, who cares? It needs to be normalized. This is Wyoming. Like, should be the West. Like, let's get back to carrying pistols on our hips.
I was gonna say, actually, and this might have been where your example came from, but almost that exact thing happened in a Walmart somewhere in America this last year, where a guy was following a lady around, and then he did attack her. He was very brazen, and he did it in front of people, and there were guys there that decided that was something that was unacceptable, and they attacked him and held him down until police could get there. But, I mean, that's really important that we all take up our mantle to increase the safety and the responsibility of our community. And I think that having really strong leadership really supports that, and it pushes that forward. Strong leadership trickles down, so.
That's true, I agree.
Yeah.
The other side, we need to teach everybody, and I think there needs to be more classes. When my dad was chief of police, he taught a lot of classes to the public on just general self-defense, to not just women. It is available more to women, but it should be for everybody, because I have a lot of friends myself that have never been in a fight in their life, so they're not going to be the first guy to jump in and help somebody when they're like, oh, that's a big dude, I don't know if I can do that. But we do trainings. Actually, with the city, we've done them, the ALICE trainings and stuff. I can take the smallest 4 people in this room, and they can take down the biggest guy, and he will not be able to move. They do the training, and they set a $100 bill on the table. They make the giant dude lay down, and then the three or four smallest people in the group climb on top of them, hold them down, and they're like, if you can get to the $100 bill, go for it, it's yours. Can't be done. But it takes a team effort, even unarmed. But we gotta get that instilled back in our society to help each other instead of pull out our cell phones and video the incident. Drop your phone and jump in. I've done it. I am not afraid to fight. I will fight. I have fought. And we have to get more people that have that mentality to step up to the plate and protect each other. And that's been doctrinated into our schools to not do that forever. We have to have people stand up. If we stop standing up for each other, we are lost as a nation.
I do think, too, to just add, I used to work at dispatch for a while, and if people did open carry, it helps with the general societal opinion of a fear of guns,
Yes.
danger of guns.
Yep.
We had numerous calls on a regular basis of people who
Just
live
carry.
here full time, who freak out because somebody's walking down the street with a gun.
Yep.
And they were always called in as though they were probably a madman, somebody pacing somewhere to do some evil. And
The other,
to help them know that there's nothing wrong and that's legal and he's fine and calm down.
one easy way to do it too is I'll go back to the Deputy Reserve Program. You go through the Deputy Reserve Program, when you're carrying your gun, you have a belt patch with your badge on it. People see more people walking around open carrying, they notice the badge, that makes them feel more at ease, but when they come to Sheridan County, they're gonna see a whole lot of that because I plan to have a robust Deputy Reserve Program. And that will make it normalized to begin with, to where then when somebody just sees somebody carrying a gun, they might just assume that they're part of the Deputy Reserve, which I think would be great. We need to normalize seeing firearms.
So what are the requirements for that reserve thing?
So you have to go through a certain level of training. So the way Gillette's works, I talked to their sheriff for a while. Theirs is a little different than the one that I went through. The one I went through was a 3-month program, so it was 2 nights a week, and it was like 3 hours a night, and it lasted, I think, 3 months. And then you're fully certified. You go to the gun range and you have to shoot your pistol and get fully certified. You go through all the certification process, in your weaponry that officer goes through. You just don't go through quite all the legality things like at the state academy. So a reserve officer can't just go make an arrest on their own. They have to have a full-fledged officer with them, but they can back them up. They can do citizens arrests, so such as like somebody shooting up a school. Any citizen has the right to protect somebody when it's life in jeopardy. Any one of us have that right. So they can make citizens arrest in that kind of scenario. But otherwise, they're backup for police, and they can go to these games and make a front. But they have to go through, there's certain levels. So this starts out, you'll go through a certain level, then you can carry your OC spray. And then next would probably be the taser. And then the end of it is getting certified to actually carry a gun. But it is an intense training. It takes quite a while. Gillette's, they do it in a 2-year period. So they do 4 hours once a month. And then he said it takes usually 1.5 to 2 years for them to be able to fully carry. I want it to be much faster than that. So I'll do like a 4-month program maybe, or I'll stretch it out to try to make it more achievable for the working world, because everybody has to have their job and it's hard to come to night classes. But I'll try to be able to get it done at least under 6 months.
Is there an age?
21.
21?
Yep, because it's with a pistol.
Okay.
You have to own a pistol, which is 21.
And you can be up to what, 102?
So my end of it, I do think that I really believe in having the physical ability, just so there's not a liability. So I will still, the physical fitness test is age oriented, so you do less as you get older and whatever. But I will make sure that they do have to be able to pass their physical test every year, because otherwise you could be a liability. And so I do think you need to be physically fit to do the job as well. I'm a pretty big stickler on physical fitness, always have been. Gotta be the elite.
They clean clothes, or they have to wear a uniform?
So if you're actually helping, you're in uniform. Yep, you don't look any different than any other officer. Yep.
So, going back to the requirements for the reserve program, is that more like a post-832 course? Like, that would be more simplified?
Yeah, it is. It's basically
with the powers of arrest and fire?
Yeah. So they take all the extra stuff out of academy, make it just a really quick course. You still do learn a lot. There's a lot to learn in it, which is, it's actually really interesting. You learn all your traffic laws and all that still. Which, I found it crazy interesting when I was going through the reserve training, because there were a lot of laws I didn't know about. But it was, a lot of things that I didn't think I could do that I could do, such as a U-turn. I thought that they were just illegal everywhere, and then I was like, oh, wow, you can actually make a U-turn if there's no sign. I didn't know that, but yeah. So it's like cool little laws like that.
Does it include background check?
Yes, absolutely. Background check and your psych evaluation. Yep. Just like, it's basically the same hiring process that you go through to be a deputy. You have to go through all the background and all of that, FBI background check, all that. Yep. Yeah, we don't want a bunch of Looney Tunes.
Say you got elected and you're meeting with the deputies and you have a certain percentage that are not on board constitutionally.
Then I will say you have a certain amount of time to look for other employment. I'm not gonna say just to leave that day, but I'll give them opportunities if they don't wanna stand for what I stand for. Our Constitution is absolutely important, and if you don't believe in our Constitution, I don't think you should have a badge in our state. That's my belief.
This is all hypothetical, but say there, and then this is not any reflection on that I've talked to somebody or know somebody or any of those things, but say there is a group that aren't willing, that say, okay, I'll look for other work, and they leave. Where will you then start to pull? Is there enough of a community base, do you know? How do we?
I've already had people approach me telling me that if I need deputies to let them know, because they say if I get elected, they're coming here. So, and they're already sworn in, so I'm not worried about that at all. Yeah. Which is, I mean, it makes me feel good because there's enough people that are sworn in that want to work for me, so I think that shows my leadership quality and that people trust me.
And I do have to say, with the brother-in-law in law enforcement, when he was ready to leave Alaska and get closer to family, he has a dear friend who assured him that in no way, shape, or form was Sheridan County for him, period.
I've met quite a few
Because they
people
were
that,
too corrupt, and nobody would do, or not enough, would do what is right, and so they opted not to come here. So,
and there's some
good
that
for
have
you.
worked here for a short period of time that left right away too, because I've had one person make a statement to me that, I mean, I don't know them real well, but they appear that they would be a good law enforcement officer, and they said they would rather work at Walmart, which is terrible to me when they have a career in law enforcement. But I think that it's important that we get good leadership, because I'm a firm believer. I mean, I look at fire stuff personally, and people don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses most often. And if you have a huge turnover rate, you need to take a look in the mirror if you're their leader. And I do really honestly feel like I have great leadership capabilities, and getting to know everybody I work with on a really personal level, to where, you know, you should know their family and what their family's going through. And I mean, the leading cause of death in any public service is suicide. Well, if you're not connected with your employees, how will you ever know to prevent that from happening? We've had officers, ones that I knew personally, that have committed suicide in our state. And one of which was the guy that you go to if you have problems. But everybody in this profession at some point needs psychological help. And I do think that that needs to be a huge thing across all aspects of emergency services in our county, to have that critical incident checklist, that if you meet these critical incident checklists, it's mandatory that you get counseling for however many sessions. Because as a guy, personally, I know it's very hard to go to somebody and say, that messed with my head. It's really hard, especially being an alpha male, and you don't want to let somebody know that something's bothering you. And for those type of people, you need to have it mandatory. There's tons of statistics and programs out there that already have it in place. It just needs adopted. If you go on a call and it meets this criteria, you have counseling. It's just the way it is. It's the same as an officer. If you have an officer involved shooting, he's mandatory to be off the job for 30 days. So why don't we have that for the other calls that really mentally mess with you? I've seen some of the worst calls I've seen in my career in the last 2 years through this pandemic, because of the psychological issues it caused for people. And people need help. And just because you work the job and you think, oh, I've dealt with that before, I've seen that, I've seen this, there's always going to be something that sticks with you. And people need help, and it needs to be mandatory.
So as a sheriff, understanding the dangerous nature of the job and the situations that people get put in, would you work to normalize getting counseling as just occupational maintenance,
Yes,
the same
absolutely.
way changing the oil in the
Yep.
car would be?
Yep. I think absolutely. They should have a cycle every 3 months is what I think, minimum. And then if you have a call that hits that criteria, you're going more. But I honestly think everybody in the world can benefit from counseling. We all have issues. I don't care how normal people think they are. We all have issues, and we can be better humans by going through counseling. The other thing we don't have here is a chaplain. It was denied when a group of pastors went to the SO and they asked if they wanted a chaplain. That was denied because of the separation of church and state. Perversion of the law. It's not even a law, actually, but it's ridiculous. I don't care if you don't believe. I actually talked to my pastor and I said, we have tons of channels. We have event channels. If people don't want to listen to it, they don't have to. But one of my goals is to have every shift change prayed over. The pastors all around our community, I'm sure, would love to pray over our officers, They can do it on the event channel. The people that want to hear it can tune in. I think it's important, even if they don't want to hear it, they're still getting prayed over, and I would have the peace of mind, and I would have the right to be able to get that in place, and we do need chaplains.
Amen.
Absolutely.
I would, on that same vein, then assume you would have a very open door policy to pastors and Bible study
Absolutely.
in the jail itself.
Yep.
Without any limitation there.
And I do think that the officers that are on duty on Sunday should be able to attend their church. You might have to respond from there, but I don't know if a lot of them do or not. I know in my church, I know a couple officers that go there, and I've never seen them in uniform there. Maybe they don't work Sundays, but I think that you should be able to attend church on duty. I think it should be that way on the fire department too. It's not, but I think it's very important, and it makes your church feel safer. We've had instances in our church where, you know, people know my dad or they know me, and they'll like go up to my dad and be like, hey, you might want to watch over here. You know, just sometimes it happens. You don't know, and somebody comes in and they look intimidating and they're constantly at the back of your church. You know, you want to keep an eye on them. So it's important to have somebody in there that, you know, the pastor trusts or your church body trusts. Like, I think churches should have security too. We have a huge war on Christianity right now. Churches have been shot up.
Yes, they do.
We should have the same level of security in our churches as we have in our schools. We lose the Christians out of our society, we've really lost everything because there's a huge war on us the way it is.
We're doing good, guys. Anybody got anything more?
So outside of the deputy reserve program, is there any other, how do I want to put this? Is there any other resources you could offer churches specifically that, say, are trying to kind of get security together a little bit in light of some of these church shootings?
I mean, just training in general. I mean, even if somebody doesn't want to become a full-fledged reserve officer, I would open it up. They can come to the trainings, especially, you know, like the, you know, hand-to-hand combat. I think everybody should know that. I mean, you should know how to defend yourself in general. I mean, I was lucky enough to grow up with a dad that taught me all of that. I was kind of his wrestling dummy, I think, for the most part. But I've learned a lot. Like, I'm pretty good at tying people in knots because of it. And I think it's just good skills that people should have. You never know when you need them. You should know how to defend yourself. I was very fortunate to grow up in that aspect where, you know, no matter how big somebody is, you should know how to take them down.
Could it be that, similar to not that I fully agree with it, but the idea that the fire marshal comes in and checks your building to make sure it's safe enough to code? I do take issue with some of the coding stuff, but, cause I'm a very limited regulation kind of gal.
Yep.
But separate from that, would it be cost prohibitive, time prohibitive for the SO to have classes or have appointments where you could come into a church building and say, well, right away, these are things that are a problem, or these are things that are a risk for the safety of your congregation, all in here on a Sunday morning. And I've been to a training with somebody who does that privately, so there is, churches can hire people for that full intensive. But I'm thinking on a more of just a basic overview, these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses, and then the church could go hire the people to come in specifically, right?
Yeah, I think that should be available.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, obviously, it depends if there's calls or something and they can't make it that day, but, you know, it's the same as the fire department. We schedule stuff for people, and, I mean, if we're on a call, we don't make it that day, but you reschedule. I think that should be available for the churches. If they, you know, talk with the pastor, and if their church wants to do a mock drill or whatever, then have somebody say, go.
Right.
And then have the officers there to judge it.
Yeah.
I mean, in a lot of that too, you can set up cameras and whatever else so that you can see how people act throughout all the rooms and whatever. I think it'd be fun anyways to know how your church reacts.
Yeah, it would be good for, what I like about what you're saying on a lot of these fronts is your approach seems to be much more of, equal footing with the community and
Mhm.
completely integrated, more
Yes.
so than
Mhm.
separated and
Yeah.
some kind of legal thing
Mhm.
here and
Yep.
then the rest of us.
And it's good for, I think it's good for the law and emergency personnel to know how the different churches would react. It's like just how we know how the schools will react. There's a lot more people in churches sometimes than there are in the schools. So knowing like, okay, well, we've done this drill with this church. We know that this is the route that they're primarily gonna take. So if something does happen, then they can be like, well, I know this is how they reacted. We can plan this way because of it. It's doing a pre-plan. Everything really needs to be more proactive in emergency service altogether. Because if you're only ever reactive, you get caught with your pants down and you have a bunch of hiccups. You're gonna have a hiccup in the situation anyway. We're all human, we all make mistakes, but you'll have a lot less mistakes if you've planned it already and trained on it. Yep, can't be complacent, and we have to have transparency. And a lot of that transparency comes from doing drills like that, being involved in your community. I think a lot of people have no idea where our sheriff stands. That's a problem. They should know very well and feel protected because of it.
If people want to learn more about you or track what you're doing or just learn about your campaign, how can people reach you?
So I have sheriffmclain.com is my website, and then McLain for Sheriff is my Facebook, and the People's Sheriff is my Instagram account.
And if you didn't get all that,
Yeah, there's cards in the back that have all that information.
Awesome.
And if you do support me and you want a sign, then grab a card and call me. I just ran out of signs today, but I have another 100 coming hopefully by Wednesday. And then I also have my details on how to contribute to my campaign on that card. I'm planning on hopefully doing a pancake breakfast or something here soon to raise funding. I don't know if you guys know, but it is extremely expensive to campaign. That was one of my learning curves of the whole political side of things, and yeah. So any help, every dollar counts.
Would you say that's the biggest challenge in not just in running, but with whoever, with the people that you're running against?
Yes, for sure, the people that I'm running against have way deeper pockets than I have, absolutely. Yep. I think that's the biggest challenge. It's hard for me too, because I've never been one to ask for money, and that's extremely hard for me to do. But it is very expensive to campaign.
Especially if you're driving door to door.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that it's the hardest part for most people, but for me, I love talking to people, so the door-to-door thing, I actually get a lot of enjoyment, and I love ending my day that way because I do believe we have great people in our community, and I have met amazing people by going door-to-door that I never knew before. So I do feel like I have a very good group of support in our community so far. I ripped through 100 signs in like a week and a half, 2 weeks, so I feel like that's pretty good support. But hopefully I'll rip through the 100 just as fast, but I just hope I get the money the same at the same speed because they're expensive.
And Zach, do you need help putting things out or hanging things?
I would
outdoors,
take any
or-
of the help that I can get. I think the more word, if everybody that likes me can tell 10 people, I'll win. I really do believe that because I have a good support group. But the other side of it is I'm too conservative for Facebook to boost my posts. So if you are on Facebook and I put something on my page, I would greatly appreciate any shares, because I've tried multiple dollar amounts, I've tried changing my wording. I'm flagged as a conservative or something, I think, because they won't boost my posts.
Okay, anybody got anything else?
Since we're winding down, just a fun question.
Yep.
Conceal carry, safety on or no?
I put my safety on. Of course, most of the time I have a Glock, so it's just the trigger, but yeah, if I have my 9mm, then I have my safety on, but I also train with my safety on.
Okay.
Should always, you have to, like an old pistol with a hammer.
Yeah.
Catch it, and then what are you gonna shoot, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It's always the safety on.
I always.
So my concealed carry has the trigger safety
Yep.
too, but I've caught a lot of guff for that and gotten like, no, you need to have one that has a separate.
I mean, the way the trigger safeties are designed, they're designed for that. And like my 380, it has a long trigger pull, so it's not like you can just touch it and it goes off. I mean, you actually have to train shooting it because of the long trigger pull, because it's a long trigger pull and you have to concentrate on being on target with it. I think the biggest thing is practicing. I think if you're gonna carry, practice and know your accuracy and know how to use it, and practice in real life situations. I had a buddy that used to live here and he would do classes for the public on actually live shooting and what your normal scenarios are. You know, a lot of people, they like go as far as they can to shoot when, I mean, most of the time it's right up against somebody. By the time you get that gun out, it's not a pull up and shoot, you're shooting from right here. As soon as you get it out, you point and shoot, and you should practice that way without even looking at your sights. Point and shoot, and you'd be amazed at how accurate you really are just by lining up and shooting.
Things, remember your finger.
Yep.